What's up, y'all? Welcome to my channel. If you remember a couple weeks ago, I posted an unboxing video of this bike right here, the Vitus Mythique 27.5 VRX. This is my wife, Loren, and this is her bike. Today is gonna be like a follow-up video of that unboxing. I'm gonna just ask Loren what she thinks of the bike, her initial impressions, maybe some things she might change, but also just let y'all know she's not a seasoned mountain biker. This is actually her first real mountain bike. I'm gonna actually put on screen real quick the bike she had prior to this one so you can get an idea of what I believe to be her upgrade was. So to start off, first, when we first talked about getting you a mountain bike, you didn't really seem to understand how it was an upgrade or why maybe you needed full suspension. Since then, has that ideology changed?
Definitely. I definitely can feel the difference because I know I have a suspension on my bike.
Alrighty. You'd also said things like, I remember you telling me you're like, big rocks kind of scared you. And I personally believe that maybe the reason for that was because you had never been on a bike that could handle it. I know your previous bike did have a front suspension fork, but it even also had a warning label that said it wasn't meant for mountain biking. I think that was originally put on there for comfort, for just like riding around town, and maybe if you hit some bad pavement or something, it would just kind of help soak up those bumps. But it wasn't meant for actual mountain biking. So since then, has actual trail riding changed for you? Do you feel a little more confident?
Yeah, definitely feel more confident. And you didn't tell me about that it wasn't meant for mountain biking till like after I got this bike. So I had been taking it everywhere and mountain biking with it. But yeah, I definitely feel a huge difference, and I'm very thankful that I got a new bike.
So when we first got it, we were kind of limited both by like time and the weather wasn't really cooperating. So we had to wait like a week for you to actually take it on actual mountain bike trails. But within that time of me building it and us actually taking it to the trails, what were your initial impressions just riding it around here and just going on like the little dirt paths behind our house? What were kind of your first thoughts?
It was definitely comfortable. I noticed that the width, or my, what would you call that?
The handlebars?
Yeah, the handlebars were wider, so I wasn't used to that. But it was, I could definitely feel the suspension, like just riding around our neighborhood. Yeah, mostly I just thought it was comfortable and it was a wider grip. That was my initial thought, at least.
Awesome. So since purchasing the bike and since building it up, we've actually done a lot of different terrain. We did a week trip in Bentonville. We rode 3 days straight. If you've ever been to Bentonville, Arkansas, the trails there are amazing. They put a lot of money and a lot of effort into those trails. They're very different than here in Austin. We have very technical rocky trails here, where they have a lot more flow trails. They have a couple jump lines, just a lot more variability amongst their trails. Comparatively speaking, we kind of only really have Bentonville and the few times you've ridden trails here in Austin. Did you feel like maybe your bike performed better on one or over the other?
I mean, I think because in Bentonville we only rode on more dirt paths compared to in Austin it's more rocky, so I liked the dirt paths a little bit more. So I guess to answer your question, I guess I enjoy the routes or the trails that are dirt and then also have like a variation of climbs and drops or valleys or whatever you want to call it.
Alrighty. So one thing we did, especially when we went to Bentonville, that I don't think you've ever done, was 20 miles straight of trail riding, which she's done longer rides before, but it was mostly asphalt with a little bit of dirt paths. But we did an area in Bentonville called the Back 40. It's 40 miles total, but they have a 20-mile loop that basically goes around the whole kind of trail area. And we did that one day while we were in Bentonville. Can you tell me how that 20-mile ride compared to the 20-mile ride you did on your old bike?
Both were very tiring, and I think in Bentonville we just hit a lot more hills than I've ever done before. And so, I mean, but again, I felt like I could go over everything and it wouldn't affect me. I felt like I could go over all these rocks and roots and they wouldn't affect me as much negatively as much as my other bike. So I felt more confident in the back 40. But I think because I had never done so many climbs before, they were both equally painful in my legs.
So I think a lot of that might be because it's got a 12-speed drivetrain, even though your last bike you had, I think, a triple up front. So you had 3 rings in the front and I think 9 or 10 speeds in the back. I think you might have even bigger ratio of gears on this bike. And it's typically easier when you only have like 1 set of gears to choose from versus 2. So I think it was easier for you on those longer sustained climbs to find yourself a good gear. Mm-hmm. And also too, when you're going uphill, sometimes having the added grip of the suspension can help. There's usually kind of multiple trade-offs. You want your suspension to be stiff enough where when you're pedaling, it doesn't bounce up and down, but soft enough to where when you go over larger squared off edges or roots, it's going to track the ground better. And so I think that was something maybe you were noticing on the Bentonville ride, was just the added grip.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely could climb the hills a lot better compared to Bastrop on my old bike.
And when we did, I mean, I think overall in Bentonville, I think we climbed more. I think there's much more elevation. I actually tracked it on Strava, and I think we almost doubled our elevation gain in Bentonville than what we did in Bastrop. And yeah, you seem much more confident on this than your previous bike. So kind of still talking about your previous bike compared to this bike, what would you tell people that maybe are trying to get into mountain biking, but maybe they had the same perspective you had prior? Like maybe they're thinking, oh, well, I have a bike that I've taken off-road before. Why do I need to pay the money for a full suspension bike or a dedicated mountain bike? What would you tell them?
Oh, that you can go over so many more obstacles on the trails than you can with, you know, a non-mountain bike. You can feel more confident, you know, doing harder trails because, I don't know, you just trust your bike and it just goes over things that I didn't think that I could go over with my other bike. So you just feel really good. Like you can do harder trails and you can get better and better at this sport.
Awesome. So what would you say, just speaking directly about this bike, what would you say is your favorite feature?
I think I like the dropper post. I'm not really good at it yet, but I don't know. I just kind of like how it's just fun to me. But I also obviously like the suspension and then whatever the term is for how I can get up the hills.
Just the drivetrain. That's what it would be. Yeah, you just have a good drivetrain for different conditions.
Yeah, because I can go up the hills super easily.
Okay. Is there anything you would change about the bike? Personal touch or maybe how it rides? Anything?
Not really. I mean, maybe doesn't really matter, but the color, I kind of wanted like a white bike or like, I don't know. That's not really
anything.
That's
honestly.
not really important, but yeah, I don't love the color, but I mean, it's not like a huge priority, but I think that's the only thing.
Okay. As part of this follow-up, I was going to tell y'all just a couple of things about the bike that I've noticed, especially when I'm riding next to Loren or even going back and looking at some of the footage. The bike actually pedals very efficiently, a lot more efficiently than you would think for a bike with this much travel. typically, depending on suspension setup and the pivot layout and all of that, rear suspension tends to bob a little bit when you're pedaling, depending on the bike and how it's set up. And I don't notice it at all. And she's done a lot of pedaling, she's done a lot of climbing, and the suspension actually remains very stiff whenever it's on the flats or climbing, but it seems to be very active when going downhill, which was something I noticed. I think part of it has to do with how the suspension is laid out and also to the rear shock. We set it to about, I think, 27% sag initially, and we've just kept it at that. It seems to be working really well. Again, this is her only bike, so I kind of have to go off what she says. She likes the way it's set up currently, so we're sticking with that. I think we did maybe a little bit more on the fork. I think it's set up to about 30%. And again, we haven't really touched the settings. I did add 1 click of rebound to it since then, just because it looked like on the steeper downhill stuff, it wasn't returning as quick. And especially here in Texas, we have a lot of very quick, small bumps. And so sometimes ramping up the rebound a little bit helps. Nothing's come loose. Everything has stayed relatively tight. We did have a little bit of issue with the cable on the dropper post fraying, which I think is normal. I might need to just get a cable end cap and clamp it on there. For the time being, I've got some adhesive strips that I was able to kind of tape it down and get it out of the way so it didn't risk, scratching your thumb or something like that. Those cables can be kind of gnarly. The other issue I had, I mentioned this briefly in the unboxing video, but it was very, very difficult to find a bottle cage that would fit properly. Initially I thought it was fine, but when I put a bottle in it, I actually realized that when the rear shock compresses, the rebound dial at the top would actually hit the water bottle that was in the cage. So I dug around, went to my local bike shop and tried on probably 5 or 6 different bottle cages until I found this specialized one. I can't remember the exact name of it, but I'll put the link to it in the description if one of y'all has a Vitus out there in this size and you're having the same issue. And it just misses the water bottle. And it's nice too because it's a side entry bottle cage, so it makes it a lot easier to get the water bottle out because it's pretty snugly fit in there right now. But other than that, the bike has held up really, really well. No noises that no squeaks. Brakes seem to have set in very well. I changed the tires to tubeless about a week before our trip to Bentonville, and it was actually super easy because I didn't know this, but the tubeless tape had already been installed on the rims. Even though it had been shipped with tubes, all I had to do was pull the tubes out, throw a tubeless valve on, put in the sealant, and it was ready to go. It was super easy. The Schwalbe tires sat really well into the bead of the rim, and there have been no issues with losing air or flats or anything like that. So all in all, I've been really happy with the bike, and I'd say you've probably been happy too. So if you like this video, please hit the like button, and if you want to see more content like this, hit the subscribe button. Thanks.